deeply wounded man helplessly stumbles in terror from a mysterious figure in hot pursuit of him. His pursuer goes on to brutally finish him off in the middle of the woods, before dragging his body away. The brutal scene then cuts to a joyful family of 4 on a road trip in their camper. They shortly stop for their meal, and the dad, Keith, gets into action for a barbecue, and he goes on to serve the undercooked steak to his son, Jeff. Jeff gladly picks it up, unlike his sister, Amy, who doesn't want to eat and opts to go for a walk, leaving her mom, Kathleen, defending her case. As the couple catch up on the matter, Jeffrey draws a couple of chocolate bars and keeps count of them. Meanwhile, Amy gets to a safe distance and draws her stashes, before secretly taking some. Shortly afterward, the family's serene ambience is cut short as 2 locals arrive in a truck, introducing themselves as Billy and Vern. The intimidating duo claim to be on a search for their cousin Melior, who vanished the previous night. Being new to the place, Keith denies knowing Melior, but Vern keeps the talk going. He inquires more about their home, but a firm Keith stands his ground and barely welcomes them. To ease things out, Jeff offers them some of his chocolate bars as a friendly gesture, but Vern instead offers a trade with his stashes. Vern enjoys the chocolate right when Amy shows up, and the creepy guys look at her like they want to eat her. They ask if she sees Melior, but the nervous Keith instructs Amy to go sit in the van and apologizes to the men as they're in a hurry. Finally, the duo immediately gets into their vehicle and leaves without a hassle. Keith and his family then pack their bags and start their journey back home. Unfortunately, after a while, they soon realize they aren't off the hook yet as they bump into the boys once more. Their truck has seemingly broken down, but Kathleen doesn't buy the story as they spot Vern with a shotgun. The boys claim that the only towing service around is closed on that day, and their next call would be their home to get another ride. The 2 men ask for a ride, as their car broke down, and the family is passing their town anyway. Realizing they're uneasy about a shotgun, Vern asks Keith to at least take Billy with them, and leave him behind. Keith reluctantly gives in despite Kathleen's fears, and they set out to drop him in his house along the way. Billy engages them all along, and even plays a game with Jeff, but Kathleen still can't hide how uneasy she is. Billy casually talks about his place, where he lives with his uncle and his cousins, while repeatedly saying that they are good people. His cousins have been running the place since they were kids. However, things take a dark turn when he picks up Jeff's notebook to spearhead the game. Billy becomes startled and worried because it belongs to their missing friend Melior. It's Melior here, playing word. Oh, you're free. Jeff attacks the unsuspecting Billy. Surprisingly, everyone remains calm, as if Jeff did nothing, even as Billy slowly succumbs. It's then revealed that the family indeed took out Melior the previous night for reasons known to them. Meanwhile, we see one of Billy's cousins puts down her weapon after enjoying her routine. Back to the family, they get down to business to mutilate Billy's body, before stacking it in their freezer, and their cannibalistic nature is revealed. Kathleen hands over what seems to be Billy's eyeball to Amy, which is her favorite part. Just then, Bill's phone rings, and Keith crashes it. He then adds they need to hurry as they don't want to keep their host waiting. In the house, Billy's uncle, who everyone refers to as Pa, is joined by Bill's cousins, Julie and Savannah, for dinner. A few minutes into it, a knock at the door interrupts them, and they are surprised to see Keith arrives with his family. The family informs the cousins that Billy sent them their way after bumping into them. They claim to have come across the duo when their camper broke, as Billy and Vern were in search of Melior. Hearing this, they welcome them in. Keith immediately tests the waters by asking to use their phone, and is glad to hear only Billy had one. However, during dinner, Savannah asks why Billy didn't drive them home if they met him on the way. Kathleen explains that Billy was on foot when he and Vern were looking for Melior, and the vehicle was with Vern, who moves separately. This question immediately keeps them alert, and they all pull out their weapons to attack the trio. But suddenly... What's that? Time to make room for Big Mac. A heavy giant named Big Mac arrives for dinner, and this leaves the team shaken, so everyone hides their weapons. In the meantime, Vern is waiting on the road, keeps trying to call Billy, but his phone is off. Just then, a vehicle stops by and Vern breathes a sigh of relief thinking it's Billy's. but it turns out to be the local deputy sheriff, who had recently rubbed Vern the wrong way by falsely accusing him. Following this, he apologizes and asks to give him a lift in the cold night, but the latter refuses. Vern reveals that a kind family from LA gave Billy a lift, and he would be making his way back shortly. The deputy sheriff then leaves despite seeing Vern's questionable state. It turns out that Jeff gave him spiked chocolate bars, which upset his stomach and caused him to frequently throw up. Back in the house, Jeff offers them his candies, and Pa says no one takes sweets in the household to preserve their teeth. But Julie picks 2 from Jeff anyway, and shares one with Big Mac. Later on, Amy excuses herself to the restroom, but instead seizes the opportunity to roll up her stuff. But she gets nervous as Savannah waits right outside, and the eyeball her mom gave her falls without her noticing. Amy bonds with Savannah seamlessly, but Julie cuts the moment short as she calls them back to the living room. Pa welcomes them for the night's entertainment, where Savannah shines with her piano skills. Shortly afterwards, Pa shows off the couple to their room for the night, while the girls lead Jeff to Billy's cozy room. Since all rooms are occupied, Julie suggests that Savannah hosts Amy since she personally hosts Big Mac. Julie adds it would be perfect for her as she is barely interested in men herself. In a surprising turn of events, Amy shares the same interest, but keeps it to herself in the moment. Savannah then moves on to tuck Pa in for the night, but she raises her concerns of the kind guests, who are almost way too nice to be true. On the other hand, Pa jokingly asks if she thinks they will eliminate them one by one, and torch the house. In the couple's room, Kathleen feels anxious because she didn't want to harm any families. She has her own principles. She only targeted those who caused harm or were burdens to society. She had never harmed innocent, good families before. However, Keith reminds him of their ambitions to eliminate troubled people with no lives and no ambition, who they refer to as lowlifes. It's revealed that they occasionally travel far from civilization to eliminate underprivileged individuals and save them from suffering. But Kathleen thinks that the family is only living off-grid, since Savannah has been recently accepted into a community college. Following this, Keith leaves for Jeff's room to brief him on his plans, so that the boy doesn't act spontaneously to quench his thirst. He plans to divide the members amongst them, and asks him to stay off Big Mac, who he would be personally handling. Meanwhile, Vern, who is now convinced something terrible might have happened to Billy, sets off on foot to find him. Back in the house, Savannah is surprised to see Amy speaking over her phone to her lover Blair, as they seem to haven't had a phone previously. Amy explains that her battery is almost dead and she was saving it, and then they get ready for bed. Unbeknownst to Savannah, her sister Julie is in the washroom vomiting as the chocolate toxins gradually kick in. Big Mac is also affected, and rushes outward to throw up. Back inside, Amy reveals that her mom supports her desires, but has kept them from her strict dad for now. As the duo enjoy their time, Amy's family jumps into action. Keith slowly makes his way upstairs to meet Pa, while Jeff is seen appearing majestically behind Big Mac. He quickly launches an attack on the unsuspecting Mac, and swiftly gets several cuts on the beast. At the same time, Amy invites Savannah for a puff which works best for her. Meanwhile, Jeff gets the upper hand in the fight, but is soon overpowered when Mac hits him to the ground. He almost finishes him off when he gets a vomiting reflex, giving Jeff a chance to help him stop vomiting by blocking his throat. Keith, who has now made it to Pa's room, sees this from the window, and is freaked out, waking the old man up. After splitting Pa's head, Keith recalls Jeff back in for a lecture, as he went against the plan. Her mom scolds Jeff for his dangerous risk that would have turned out deadly. Despite this, Keith secretly lauds Jeff for his courageous move and gives him Pa's tongue. Meanwhile, Amy slowly pulls out her weapon, but a last-minute change of mind by Savannah makes Amy fall off the bed and falls on her cutter. She explains that it's for protection, and Savannah fetches some dressers and stitches. Seeing her skills in many fields, Amy is unable to finish her off, as she admires her bravery and talents, which doesn't fall in the family's job description. As Savannah heads out to pick up her medical kit, she hears some noises, and is surprised to see the family's camper nearby, despite their earlier sentiments that it had broken down miles away. After Keith and Kathleen step off it, the girl goes in for a look out of curiosity. But it doesn't take long before she comes across Big Mac's heavily mutilated body. On the other hand, Julie eventually comes across the eyeball Amy dropped earlier, which shocks her to the core. She immediately staggers her way to Pa's room, only to be terrified by his state. Keith suddenly grabs her for Kathleen to get a share. Jeff joins them, courtesy of Keith to witness her hesitant mom doing it for the first time. Everyone gathers around, and Kathleen prepares to do it, but is abruptly cut short as an arrow swooshes through her neck. Here, Savannah successfully takes one down with her skills, and prepares to take down the evil family, so the family stays away from the window. Seeing her mother dead, Amy screams at her father and claims that these people aren't drifters or street trash, but Keith insists that they are nothing. To seek vengeance, Keith ties Julie up and hurts her, knowing Savannah would eventually show up. True to it, the marksman sneaks through the window into her bedroom, where she luckily finds Amy's phone. She immediately calls for help, but barely gives all the details, as Jeff overhears her and approaches the room. The deputy sheriff who received the call tells his superior that Amy's phone number and area code are from Los Angeles. He recalls Vern telling him that a kind family from LA gave Billy a lift. On the other hand, Savannah easily knocks Jeff down. She uses him to negotiate her sister's release afterwards. However, Keith vows to end her sister, and Amy begs her to let go of Jeff, as her psycho dad will surely do it. Fearing for her sister, she lets go of Jeff, but Amy turns her back on her as she aids her capture. Her psychopathic dad then goes on to cook them Big Mac's tongue, and jokingly asks Julie if it smells familiar. To give her a clear hint, Keith brings Big Mac's mutilated arm, much to her horror. This pushes the ladies further to reject devouring the meat, and this in turn forces Keith to act up. He coldly chops off Julie's thumb and devours it. To make matters worse, he moves over to Savannah to take out her talented fingers. However, a last-minute blurt from Savannah halts his plan, as she claims Amy had coitus with her. Seeing the father's reaction, she spills the beans on her hidden sexuality and drugs, which catches Keith by surprise. As the father and daughter get confrontational on the issue, Savannah gets a moment to hasten her escape attempt and manages to free herself in the nick of time. She secretly picks up a fork and drives it into Keith's eye, prompting Amy to respond. Surprisingly, despite the pain, the monster devours its own eye. Here Vern luckily makes it home and fired at him, and immobilizes him momentarily, right before Jeff comes to his rescue. Chaos ensues as everyone fights for their lives and group to win. Savannah gets into a battle with Jeff, leading him to the kitchen, where she burns his hand and scalds his face with boiling water. As he weakens from the pain, Savannah applies pressure to his neck, killing him. As Vern takes on the father, Keith grabs a nearby knife and stabs Vern with it, killing him instantly. Keith is satisfied with this, but Julie, who is now free, gets the chance to give Keith a deep haircut. Following this, the poor sisters finally get a sigh of relief. But they soon realize it's not over, as Amy rises up and fatally stabs Julie. An enraged Savannah goes after Amy, brutally fights her to the ground, and smashes her face against the piano. However, she allows for an epic last dance, by making it slow and painful, and urging her to run. But as Savannah is about to end the nightmare, Savannah is killed by the idiot deputy sheriff who has just arrived. The deputy is misled by the scene. He feels bad for the guests who seem to have been treated badly by their hosts. He immediately calls for medical help and reports to headquarters that the villagers killed the innocent tourist family. Moments later, the deputy hears a racket and sets out to investigate it, leading him to the family's camper. And then all of a sudden, now free, the psycho girl then goes on to torch the house. The movie ends as Amy sets out in her family's camper, with evil still rushing through her bloodstream.